a new topic tonight. So for those who have missed the past few weeks, slate's clean. Can't miss any more.
No more kosher market.
Until we miss the next one.
Until the next one, yeah.
Now, I wasn't sure what topic to move on to, but those of you who were here at Tisha B'Av, during Mincha and Ma'ariv, Rabbi Levi Varney gave a talk about the destruction of the temple and the story that led to it. And he mentioned some things that maybe people haven't heard about, so they say, you know what, that's a good idea. Let's take the story of the destruction of the temple and let's learn it from the first hand, from the sages who were there, who heard about it from their teachers. Let's see what happened.
But they were the next generation.
The next generation, next few generations, yeah. Okay. The Gemara comes in Masechet Gittin. Okay, Gittin, most of you know what that is, but this is a little bit of a tangent because there's some correlation. When a person, God forbid, has to divorce his wife, there's certain monetary arrangements have to be made that he owes her, like alimony, similar concept. In Judaism, if a person divorces his wife, he still has to provide for her. A little bit of a tangent because there's some... Thank you for the echo there. When a person gets married, he writes a ketubah. The ketubah says what he owes his wife. If a person does not have money to pay, there's a lien put on his property. So this Mishnah deals with what happens if the owner of the property sold the property that has the lien and then dies or divorces his wife. How does she collect? Because he sold that property. Okay, so there's a connection to Gittin, and there's a connection to the destruction of the temple, as we'll see. So we're starting toward the bottom of the page, where it says Mishnah. Lohayu Sikrin beYehuda. There's a law called Sikrikon, and we're going to explain in a minute what that means. The law Sikrikon was not applied in Judah, Beharuge Milchama, when people were getting slaughtered during the war. Me Haruge Milchama ve'elech. After the war was over and people weren't being slaughtered, Yesh pa Sikrikon, the Jewish sages instituted this law called Sikrikon. What is it? What's this law? Ketzad, how does it work? Lokach misikrikon. If a Jewish person acquired a field, piece of land, from a sikrikon is a strong individual who threatened a landowner and said, sell me or give me your land, if not I will kill you. That's a sikrikon.
Extortion.
An extortionist.
Yeah.
Comes to the Jewish landowner in the land of Israel. You want to live, sell me your land or give me your land as a gift. Okay? So the rabbis had to get together and say, how could we protect the landowners, right? This is going on. How can we protect them? So they have this law. What's the law? If this sikrikon, this extortionist, had a piece of land, and he gives it or sells it to another Jewish person, not the person he took it from, someone else, what happens? So, lakach misikrikon, a Jewish person acquired a piece of land from this extortionist. After he acquired it, he goes to the original owner and he says, I want to buy your land that the guy took from you. And he makes an acquisition from the original owner as well. Okay? So he buys it or arranges to buy it from the extortionist, then goes to the original owner and says, I want to acquire it from you, and he makes an acquisition from the original owner as well. The sages say, Mikacho bato. The acquisition is void. We say that this second guy does not acquire the piece of land. Why not? The assumption is, from the extortionist got the land by illicit means. He really has no right to sell it or to give it to someone else. So it makes sense that that's not a good transaction. The second guy can't buy it. But he went to the original owner then and he made an acquisition. So why is it nullified? Because the original owner, we presume, is scared to offend the extortionist. If he says, no, I don't want to sell it to you, the extortionist is going to come back and say, hey, you're butting into my business, and he's going to kill him. So we're worried that the original owner is scared, and that's why he gives in and allows the second person to acquire it. So the sages say, batal, it's nullified. the second Jewish person who acquired it from the extortionist cannot hold on to it, cannot keep it. But Mibala is if the Jewish person first went to the original landowner and acquired the land from him, and then he went to the extortionist, the Sikrikon, and he arranged to get the land from him, then that's a good sale. Because when he first went to the original owner wasn't scared at that point from the extortionist. So the original owner wholeheartedly gave up his ownership stake in the land. So the second owner now takes acquisition of the land. Okay, clear? Good.
That's clear, but what happened if, like, I said to him, you go to him first and then come to me?
Okay. I don't want to really get into it because this isn't the final law. This was the law and it changed, so I don't want to get into what if because that's not really the law. This is just part one. Now the Gemara gives another law which resembles this law, but we said this is the connection to the woman, the divorcee. Lakach mina ish, if somebody acquired land from the husband, remember we said the husband owes the woman alimony if he divorces her or dies, and if he doesn't have the money, there's a lien put on his property. So lakach mina ish, if a person acquires land from the husband, v'chazav lakach mina isha, and then he goes to the woman who has a lien on his land and acquires from the woman too, mikachai batal, the sages says, we void that acquisition. Why? Presumably the same reason. The woman doesn't want to go against her husband. Her husband sold the land to another individual. She's worried to say, I don't accept, because her husband's going to get upset at her. So we're worried that she acquiesced as out of fear, not wanting to upset her husband. Okay, so the sages say that sale is no good. Mina isha, but if somebody acquired the lien first from the wife, v'chazav lakach mina ish, and then he went and acquired it from the husband, it's a valid sale. He does take possession of the land because the wife gave it up, her claim first, before the husband sold it. Okay. Now, as I told Leah, the final law is a little bit different. Zu Mishnah Rishayna. The Mishnah says that's what the law used to be, but that law created a problem. The problem happened. Anyone who bought land from the extortionist had their sale ripped up. People learned not to buy land from extortionists. What ended up happening? The land of Israel was owned by all these foreign invaders who came and forcibly took lands from Jewish people. The Jewish people were scared to take it back because the sale would be ripped up. And now the land of Israel belongs to foreign invaders. So they saw a problem happened, so they changed the law. Beis Din Shalacherim Amru, a court came later and they made a new law. If somebody acquires land from one of these extortionists, he gives 1/4 of the value of the sale to the original owner, and he could keep it for himself. The second guy who buys it from the extortionist keeps it, gives the original owner 1/4. Why 1/4? The presumption is that the extortionist sells the land at a discount because he got it for free, right? He threatened the guy to kill him, got it for free, and usually the discount he gives is he sells it 1/4 less than the value. So the person pays 3/4 to the extortionist, 1/4 to the original owner. The second guy keeps ownership of the land, so we don't worry that the land is now being owned by all the foreigners because everyone's scared to buy it. And the original doesn't lose as much because at least he gets the 1/4. Okay?
Does this only apply to property or any stolen property to other items?
No, this is talking about property, physical property,
Land,
not movable items. That's right.
So this happened when there was no civil law to punish the extortionist?
That's a great question. The Gemara is going to address it because remember we said only during the war they had this law. Later on it was abolished.
I see.
During the war, what war? It's talking about the war of the Second Temple, when the Romans were in charge, and the foreign people who came from Rome were not scared of the Jewish people. We'll get into why they weren't scared. Okay? The Gemara will tell us why. So they changed the law. You just have to give 1/4 of the value to the original owner. We're on page number 2 here. All right, no problem.
Thank you.
A Masai. When does the ruling apply? Bisman she'ein biyadam likach. This only applies when the original owner has no means to acquire the land for himself. He had the land, he's house rich, but his bank, he's got no money. So now the extortionist came.
Sounds like a lot of people in Vancouver.
Yes, very familiar.
Yeah.
The extortionist came, said, your money or your life, give me your home, give me your land. He had no choice, he wanted to live. But he doesn't have the means to buy it back. The extortionist is now selling it at a reduced rate, right? 3/4 the value, and he can't afford it. So if a third party comes and buys it, we tell him, keep it, give the original owner a quarter. But let's say the original owner had some money put aside. He was able to buy it for himself. They get precedence. So if he could afford it, he could buy it. No one else has permission to come in and buy it.
How about if the buyer from the extortionist is a non-Jew and the original owner was a Jew? So I would say that the original owner still has priority.
Yes. Yes. The original owner has priority. It doesn't matter who the second buyer is. However, this being the case in this time of history, the Jewish courts had some organization and they were able to enforce some laws, but not any law they saw fit.
Okay.
Assuming the second person who bought it would be able to listen to the court, or the court would be able to force him, right? There were times in history they couldn't, right? This presumably is a time where they could have enforced the law. If the second person bought the land from the extortionist and the first person has the money, he has to give it to the first person. The first person could reimburse him, and he has to give up possession. Okay? Rabbi Hoshe Bezdin, Rabbi convened a court, Vinimnu, and they took a vote and decided, She'im shasab mipnei sikr koin shnei masar chaydesh, if the land remained in the property of the extortionist for 12 months, kol hakoydem nikach zacha. Once 12 months passes, whoever acquires it, it belongs to him. It doesn't go back to the original owner anymore. After the 12 months, the original owner presumably gives up hope of ever getting it back, and the new owner could keep it. But he still has to give the quarter to the original owner. That's the Mishnah. Okay? You remember in the introduction that we gave a couple months ago, the Mishnah was the original law recorded, and then the Gemara was later on. The rabbis, the Amoraim, sat together in the yeshiva and discussed and expounded and tried to understand how to apply that law to many different situations. And that's what we're going to dive into now, the Gemara. The Gemara asks the question that Jeff brought up. This law of sikrikon, this law of the extortionist, and the original, you have to give the original owner the quarter, only applied when people were being slaughtered in Israel during the time of war. Sorry, the opposite. During the time when people were getting slaughtered in Israel, the law did not apply. But the Mishnah said after the war already calmed down a bit, they weren't slaughtering people left, right, and center, they instituted this law. The Gemara says, how does that make sense? You would think the law should be when they are slaughtering the Jews and the Jewish person is scared for his life. Why does the law only come into effect after the war when they stop slaughtering the Jews? The Gemara is going to explain. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, they didn't have the law of sikrikon during the war. Laidanu badin sikrikon ka'amar. They did not apply the law. Why? Amar Rabbi Asi. Rabbi Asi said, Shalosh gzeres gazru. Titus, the Roman officer who was the one who actually conquered Jerusalem, and his people, they issued 3 edicts during the war. The first edict, the first edict was, Kod leikatul b'ktiluhu. Whoever does not kill a Jewish person gets the death penalty. Okay? This is a law that the evil conqueror Titus said when he first started conquering the tribe of Judah and the land of Israel, Jerusalem. He said to the Roman legions, whoever does not kill a Jewish person gets a death penalty. He wanted to encourage them to kill Jews. Okay, that was the first edict. Mitziyasa, the middle edict, which came a little bit later on, called the Kotel Lese Abba Zuze. Whoever kills a Jew gets penalized 4 zuz. Insignificant son. Okay? So there's some law. The law kind of relaxed. He's not forcing the Romans to kill Jews. But if you do kill a Jew, you get a penalty. A couple dollars. Okay? So, in a between stage, I guess.
A penalty or a reward?
Some commentaries say he rewarded them 4 zuz. Most commentaries say it means there was a penalty of 4 zuz. So it was. So once they destroyed the Jewish people and Rome started ruling over them, they were instituting their laws. And you can't just kill people in a civil society. So their law was, if you kill a Jew, you get a penalty. Now, they didn't like the Jews. They wanted the Jews to be killed, so the penalty was so low that it was almost laughable. Or it was laughable. I mean, a few pennies for killing a Jew, right?
But some Jews at the time were Roman citizens, so it would be the same if they kill a Jew who happened to be a Roman citizen, then they would just pay the same penalty for it.
There was, as you say, during that time, there was powerful Jews who were well connected in Rome. My guess is those Jews would be protected. People wouldn't dare kill them. And the Gemara will get into some of those powerful Jews at the time who would sit amongst the Caesars in Rome. What is the last edict? What's right? So the last edict, called the Kotel Liktilu. Whoever kills a Jew gets executed, death penalty. Okay? So the first edict, whoever doesn't kill a Jew gets killed. Second edict, whoever kills a Jew gets a penalty, very small, laughable penalty. Finally, things kind of calmed down and society kind of turned to normal. The rule of law was, if you kill a Jew, you get killed for it. Kivan de Katali, since the foreign invaders would kill Jews without fear of any... Sorry, I skipped a little bit.
Yeah.
Hilkach, Kamaisa Mitzvahs. Therefore, during the first and second edict, Kivan de Katali, since the foreigners were killing Jews without any fear of retribution, Agay Punse Gomer Makni, the first landowner who gave the land to the extortionists, gave it up wholeheartedly because he was scared for his life. If he wouldn't give it, he would be killed. Therefore, we say this sale's a good sale. Now, this is a very interesting kind of counterintuitive, if you will, part of Jewish law. Duress, right? Those familiar with legal terms, somebody signs a contract under duress. In our modern society, we could argue the contract is null and void. If you forced him, if you held a gun to his head and said, sign it or I kill you, later on he comes to court, the court could say, the contract is worthless, you forced him, right? Jewish law, it's all about intent, all about the seller's intent. If the seller wanted to sell the land, it's a good sale. If he didn't want to sell, it's not a good sale. So, the Gemara gives an example. What happens? Somebody wants to buy something. He hangs the guy up on a tree and tells him, I'm not letting you down until you sell it to me. The Gemara says he wholeheartedly agrees to the sale because he wants to be let down. He wants to be saved. So in this case, when the people were really fearful of their life, they wholeheartedly agree to this sale because they want to live.
So
to them, it's worth it to exchange their life for the parcel of land.
So that's why, if somebody refuses to give a get, then it would be okay to beat up that person to get the get from him. That would be valid then?
It's a slightly different, similar idea, but it's slightly different. In that case, the law is that we don't force somebody to give a divorce. He has to want to do it on his own free will. But what if he doesn't? So there are times where the Bet Din, when the Jewish court had the power in the land of Israel, they had the power to force him. How? By getting him to want to do it. By getting him to say, I want. Okay? So what would they do? You hire some tough guy, and you hit him, and you say, "We'll stop hitting you when you change your want. When you want to free your wife and let her go, we'll stop hitting you."
That's
They
not
should
good.
do
That's
it
what.
today.
That's
Today you cannot
that's
do it.
mafia.
No, you cannot do it today
That's
because
protection. It's
Those
laws don't apply
Okay, I'm gonna go tomorrow
today.
to my dad.
some commentaries say, but really in his heart of hearts he didn't want to. Okay, but we say Devarim Shabalev and Envarim. Things in your heart don't count. It matters what you say. Also, some commentaries say that really he wants to. The person doesn't want his wife to suffer. Maybe his ego got in the way that he wants her to suffer and not get the divorce, but really, deep down, his pure self, his soul, wants to let her go. It's only his ego which is stopping him. So by hitting him, we're freeing him of the ego, and his true want comes out, and he really wants to. But it's kind of a tangent. We don't really want to get into
There's
it.
a guy 10 years in jail.
Yes, there is a guy recently who was convicted. We obviously, if the land of the, there is a rule in Jewish law.
10 years in jail for what?
There's a law, dina de malchus adina. When you live in a country, the law of the land is the land. So if the law of the land
What's
is
the law?
you cannot assault, right? Assault, battery is forbidden. You cannot assault somebody. You cannot claim religious freedom that the Jewish court would have allowed me to do this 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago in Israel before the destruction of the temple. The law of the land is you cannot assault somebody, so you cannot do it. Someone did it. He was caught. He was tried, and he went to jail.
But he wasn't doing it out of the goodness of his heart. He was charging hundreds of thousands.
He was charging
of
other
dollars.
money. Yes,
Yeah.
he wasn't doing it to help the poor wife.
It was a
necessarily.
business.
Okay, that's another
Anyway.
another topic.
Yeah.
Maybe when we're done this one, we can discuss that one. So the Gemara says, "Kivin de Katali, since the extortionist would have killed him, Agav unse Gomer Makne, the owner wholeheartedly gave in and transferred ownership to the extortionist. So therefore, they didn't apply this law that the second owner, his sale, the second person who comes and buy it, his sale is null and void. Because the secret coin, the extortionist really got, according to Jewish law, has acquired the land. But during the time of the last edict, when Jewish people were protected, and the extortionist, if he came and told the Jewish person, "I will kill you if you don't give me your land," what would happen? The original landowner says to himself, "I'll give it to him. I'll let him take it." It's not wholeheartedly. Why? I'll take him to the court tomorrow. The court will judge that he threatened my life to kill me. They'll judge that the sale was not a good sale. So really, during the time where he was protected, during the third edict, he didn't give up ownership of the land wholeheartedly. Therefore, they made this law of Sikrikon that the second purchaser, the second guy who comes to purchase, cannot purchase it. It's null and void because the original owner didn't wholeheartedly give up ownership. Make sense?
Yes.
So, until now, we've discussed this law of the Sikrikon. Now the Gemara is going to move on to the tangent of the war waged by the Romans on the Jewish people in Judah. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, "My diksiv." It says in Mishlei, in Proverbs, "Ashrei Adam mefachet tamid u'maksheli bo yipol bara." Praiseworthy, fortunate is the man that always fears the consequence of his actions, and he that hardens his heart will come to harm. Okay? Anytime you do something, think about what the consequences will be. Okay? We're praising Mishlei, King Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived. He's praising the man that is always in fear. Before he does anything, he sits, he calculates, he thinks what's going to happen with his actions. Maybe the situation will change. Will I still want to do it? Fortunate is that man. Somebody who just reacts and does whatever, Yipol Bara'ah, he will come to harm. How do we see this? The Gemara brings some examples where this verse is a very powerful message. First example, Akamsa bar Kamsa Charv Yushalayim. As a result of the incident involving Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Jerusalem was destroyed. Kamsa was the fellow's name. very, very powerful, wealthy Jewish person during the time of the Romans, very well connected. Okay? Kamsa. Bar Kamsa is a different person. Some commentaries say he was the son of the original Kamsa. That's why he's called the son of Kamsa. Bar in Aramaic is son. Most commentaries will say just two separate people, not necessarily related. Kamsa, Bar Kamsa. Okay? So because of that incident, Jerusalem was destroyed. Because they didn't think what would be the consequences. Like King Solomon says in Mishlei and Proverbs, fortunate is the one who calculates what the consequences will be. Because they didn't think, Jerusalem was destroyed. Second example, as a result of the incident involving a rooster and a hen, the mountain of the kings was destroyed. Mountain of the Kings was an area in Jerusalem, in the area of Judah, probably a little bit north of Jerusalem. Because of the story with the rooster and the hen, it was destroyed.
What happened to the rooster and the hen?
What happened to the rooster and the hen? Anybody know? Then we'll just have to wait till the Talmud tells us.
But so they're saying of the people who lived in the area of Hamelech?
So, Har HaMelech, the mountain of the king, literally translation, Har HaMelech, the mountain of kings, was destroyed because of a story of rooster and the hen, because somebody didn't think the outcome of his
It's
actions.
something to do with David and...
No need to guess. The Gemara is going to tell us all the stories. That's the fun here. Ashaka de Rispak Charuv Beitar. As a result of an incident with the side of a carriage, the entire city of Beitar was destroyed. Okay? 3 stories where the Gemara is going to tell us the stories in depth. What happens when somebody does not consider the consequences of his actions? First, the Gemara is going to tell us the story involving Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Kamsa Bar Kamsa Charv Yushalayim. As a result of the incident involving Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, Jerusalem was destroyed. What's the story? Dahu Gavra, there was a certain man. Derachame Kamsa. He had a good friend. His good friend's name was Kamsa. Uva'al devave bar Kamsa. He had an enemy. There was someone who he had a quarrel with. Somebody who didn't like. His name was Bar Kamsa. Okay, it happens. 2 friends, similar names.
3 people, a certain man, and then Kamsa, and then Bar Kamsa. We're talking about 3
There
people.
was one wealthy individual who the Talmud doesn't give us his name. He had a friend named Kamsa. He had a guy he hated named Bar Kamsa. One day, Avad Sudasa. This wealthy man says, I'm making a banquet. I have a birthday party. I have whatever reason Talmud doesn't give us. He decides he's going to get together all his friends and party. Amr Leila Shaimai. He's wealthy. He's not going to send out invitations on his own. He tells his attendant, Zil, go. Aisili Kamsa. Bring my good friend Kamsa to my banquet so I can enjoy an evening of food and drink with my good buddy. Azil, the attendant went. Aisile Bar Kamsa. He made a classic mistake. He brought Bar Kamsa instead of Kamsa. Okay? It happened to the best of us.
Classic.
The postman had 2 envelopes maybe, and Kamsa, Bar Kamsa, maybe it was rubbed out a bit. He gave it to Bar Kamsa by accident. And you have the kids game, a broken telephone, so maybe, he told someone, the last guy who actually went and called him, he said Kamsa, he hears Bar Kamsa. Whoops. Okay? Asi, the host arrives at his party. Ashkiche Dahavi Yosef. He sees his mortal enemy, Bar Kamsa, sitting and enjoying himself at his banquet. Such chutzpah. Amrle, he tells Bar Kamsa, Michtiahu Gavra, Baal Devavidahu. Baal Devavidahu Gavra. What do we have here?
We'll let you in.
We have one man, you, my enemy, who's an enemy of the other man, me. My bayis hachi. What are you doing here? What do you want? Kum, get up, puk, and get out. Short, succinct, kum, puk. Short and sweet, to the point.
Disappear.
Get up, go out. The host tells Bar Kamsa, who he doesn't like, get lost. I don't want you here. Uf mipo. Kum, puk, Aramaic. Similar to the Hebrew, but in Aramaic. Get up and leave. Amrle, now Bar Kamsa is a little bit embarrassed. He's sitting here, this wealthy man, all the important people, all the rabbis, all the community leaders, the president, the gabbai, everyone's there, and he's being publicly shamed. He's got to get up and leave.
The rich person should be ashamed. You don't get rid of anyone.
Hindsight is 2020, but yes, in today's looking at today's society through the lens of bullying, we could say the rich guy should be ashamed. Maybe in those days they weren't so anti-bully, and people were scared of standing up to the bully, right? We can understand. When we were kids and someone beat on us in school, no one came to our defense, right?
Or it's his party, he can throw anyone else. Like,
I mean, the guy's his enemy. I mean, like.
And not necessarily, and he just
Kung
doesn't
fu.
like him.
Kung
He
fu.
doesn't say.
Kumpuk.
Yeah, but it doesn't say enemy. We say he doesn't like him.
No, it says
Bal
he's an
Devava,
enemy.
they were enemies. He did not like him. They quarreled. They had nothing nice to say about each other. It could easily be translated as enemy. Yes. Okay.
Adversaries.
So what happened? Amrle, Bar Kamsa tells the host, Hayol Vasi Shvakin, I'm already here. I already sat down. I'm into the appetizers. I've had a drink. Don't kick me out now. V'ahuvna lach dami ma da'achlina v'shasinu. I'll pay you for whatever I eat and drink. Give me a bill.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Okay? You're not going to lose a penny. I'll even pay the service fee. I'll tip the waiter 15%. I'll be very generous. Just don't kick me out. We're getting there. Next page, 56A1. Amrle, the host, tells Bar Kamsa, Loi, no, sorry, you're not staying. Get out. Amrle, Bar Kamsa says, come on. Yahiv nalach demei paga disudusach. You let me stay, I'll foot half the bill for the entire party. Okay? Significant sum of money.
Very good.
This was a wealthy man. Presumably his party with all the heads of state and rabbis and all the important people, easily spend $15,000, $20,000 at the Hyatt downtown or the Four Seasons if it was kosher. He's going to pay half. What do you think he answers? Amr le loy.
Niet.
No.
No,
Really?
sorry, get out.
Wow. Wow.
I don't want, just the sight of you hurts me
Stubborn.
so much.
Stubborn.
It's destroying my enjoyment. I cannot have a good time with your filthy presence here. Just get out. Amrle, Bar Kamsa is already, he's running out of options here. He's desperate. What does he say? Yahiv nalach demei kula sudasech. I will pay the entire bill for the entire banquet. Amrle loy, the host says, no, sorry, I don't want your money, get out. Nikte biyadai v'ukim va'peke. He grabs hold of him by his arm, forcibly ejects him from the party, physically picks him up, throws him out. Okay? Didn't even call the bouncer.
Like United Airlines flight.
Just like United Airlines. The poor guy was begging to go home. No, you don't go, or we'll drag you out of here. I bet you the police in Chicago learned this Gemara and says, hey, you got a good idea. We'll just pick him up and drag him out.
I used to be a bouncer. I thrown a lot of people out.
Ah, okay. So you were the wealthy guy throwing out Bar Kamsa. Okay. The guy's begging, no, I'll pay. And Ben is, no, get out. Throw him on his face. Okay. So now, this guy Bar Kamsa is scorned. He's shunned in front of the entire who's who of the Jewish community. Amar, he says to himself, Hayil v'havi yasvei rabbanan v'lei machu bei, since the rabbis were sitting at the banquet and did not protest, Shema mina kanechalu. It must mean that they agreed to it.
Mhm.
So you think it's new. You think it's new to the 21st century that everything that goes wrong in the Jewish community, we blame the rabbis, right? This is nothing new. Today, people go around blaming the rabbis for every single argument in the Jewish community, for the lack of kosher restaurants, for too many kosher restaurants, for the price of tuition, for the lack of affordable housing, right? For the Jewish
I didn't hear
organizations,
that much.
for the Federation, for JFSA. It's all the rabbis' fault, right? You've heard it before. You know, in Vancouver, unfortunately, rabbis every couple of years, there's another rabbi is blamed for something and has to leave. So this guy Bar Kamsa is that he has a trademark on blame the rabbis. He says the rabbis were there. They should have protested. They didn't protest. It means that they agreed to it. I'm going to get them back. Okay? Maybe it's a valid argument, maybe not. The commentaries say, wait, 1 second, why didn't the rabbis protest?
Mm-hmm.
So let's not forget that this fellow who hosted the meal was extremely powerful, had friends in Rome. This is before the conquest, but someone who was so powerful that even after the conquest of Jerusalem had good friends in Rome, he must be pretty wealthy, has good connections. The rabbis might have made a decision, say, hey, we get him upset, there might be a bigger price to pay than if we stick up. So for whatever reasons, the rabbi didn't say anything.
But the rabbi know the rules, the rabbi know the ethics, and they should say something.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Commentaries discuss it, and most of them say that the rabbis couldn't because of the power of this man. This man was so powerful that it wouldn't have helped, and not only that, the rabbis would have had a price to pay. So for whatever reason,
Okay.
If the rabbis protested, he would have thrown them out as well.
they would have been out of the city, exactly. They would have been on the first plane to Israel making Aliyah, although they were in Israel. Okay. So Bar Kamsa says the rabbis sat quietly by. They accepted the host's behavior. So what am I going to do? I'm going to get them back. Aizel echelbhu kurza be malka. I will go slander the rabbis to the royal palace. Okay, this is before the destruction. The Roman Empire was the superpower. They were there in what is we consider the land of Israel. They had not yet conquered the part of Israel which is known as Judah. I think I might have a map here. Give me a second, I will check.
Judah is from a little bit north of Jerusalem to.
So there was the split in the Jewish kingdom of Judah and Israel, right? The northern tribes are Israel. Judah is, I do have a map, but it's only part of it. But this is where,
Like from Beit El.
this is basically where it was. This shows us where the King's Mountain that we discussed before. We have Jerusalem, Hebron. This is the area where the story took place. Further north, we have the Roman superpower had invaded part of Israel
In the Galilee.
and had their own representatives there. So this guy Bar Kamsa says, I'm going to slander the Jewish people to the Caesar, and they're going to have a price to pay. So even though they had autonomy at this point, there would still be a political or even worse price to pay, as we will see. Ozal, he went. Amrle le Caesar, he went and told the Caesar. Probably at that time, Caesar Nero, okay? Before Vespasian took...
He was crazy one.
He was crazy, yes. He was lots of fighting when he was a Caesar, lots of infighting, lots of deaths, lots of political assassinations at the time of Nero. He was, yes, as you say, he was a little bit nuts.
The Mad King, Game of Thrones reference.
The Mad King, okay. The Mad Caesar. He goes to the Caesar, presumably Nero at this time, and he tells him, Mardu bach Yehudai. The Judeans, the Jews, are rebelling against you. They have rebelled against you. Amrle, the Caesar said to him, Mi Yimar, who says so? We're living peacefully. We have political relationships. The Jewish ambassador, he's nice. He brings me gifts. Who says that they're rebelling? I haven't heard such a thing. Prove it. Amrle, Bar Kamsa tells the Caesar, Shadarlu Kurbana, send an animal sacrifice to be brought up as a sacrifice in the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Chazisa imi karbanle, and see if they're going to accept your sacrifice. If they don't, it means that they rebelled against you. And if they do, then yeah, you're right, you have no problem. Okay. Caesar says that's a good idea, right? Don't forget, a non-Jewish person is allowed to send a sacrifice to the temple. Okay. We actually learn from that. One of the things we learned from that is you could actually accept donations from people who are not Jewish for the synagogue. Okay? Somebody comes, he's not Jewish, and says, the ark here is a bit small, it doesn't fit. I want to donate a brand new, magnificent $20,000 ark. Are we allowed to accept it?
Yeah.
We discussed it in the past whether you could accept charity from non-Jewish people. We learned from the fact that they were able to accept sacrifices in the temple from the non-Jewish people that we could accept donations. Thank God, right?
But it depends.
Thank God.
But it depends who those non-Jewish
Thank
people
God
are.
you
If
have
they,
Joe.
It depends on their intent. If their intent is to
Every
praise
Hanukkah.
the Jews and the God of the Jews, it is okay. If their intent is idol worship, we don't accept it.
yeah.
Okay?
So it's a judgment call. But it is
Yeah.
possible.
But the temple at the time also were in the hands of the Sadducees. So they wouldn't would they care if a non-Jew would bring a sacrifice to the temple because they weren't going by the.
There was a lot of, as you say, political infighting.
Yeah.
There was years where the temple was
The
controlled by
was a
not
Sadducee.
necessarily the most pious Jews. That's fine. That's a whole other discussion. At this time, presumably, the temple was not controlled by families that were not religious or anything like that, because we have a discussion of the rabbis whether to accept it. So
Also,
presumably the rabbis still had, during this
Care.
specific period in history, the rabbis had a say in the matter. Okay? Azel Shada Biadai Egla Tilta. The Caesar sent a fine calf with Bar Kamsa to Jerusalem. Bahade the Kaase, as he was going to Jerusalem, Shada Bemuma Beniv Sifasayim.
Oh boy.
Bar Kamsa creates a blemish in the calf's upper lip. Okay?
Make it cut.
Why upper lip? Hold on a second, we'll discuss it. V'amrlav bedukin shabayin. Some say he created a blemish by causing a cataract in its eye. He was able to poke in its eye to cause the pupil to go white or something like that. Either of those blemishes disqualify it from becoming a sacrifice in the temple. Duchta dilididan have muma. Either way, whether it was cutting the upper lip or making a cataract, it's a blemish in the temple. To accept it as a sacrifice is forbidden. Ulididhu. But for the non-Jewish people, lav mumhu would not be considered a blemish. If a non-Jewish person wants to sacrifice to God outside of the temple, he's allowed to, unless it's missing a limb. Small blemishes like a cut in the upper lip or a cataract for a non-Jewish sacrifice outside of the temple is okay. At this point in time, Jewish people were not allowed to sacrifice outside of the temple. There was a time they were allowed. At this point in history, it was forbidden. But in the temple, even a minor blemish, such as a cut in the upper lip or a cataract in the eye, made it forbidden to sacrifice to God. Okay?
So is this guy fault, not anyone else, because he was revengeful?
Okay. If you're talking about cause and effect, he was revengeful. Why was he revengeful? Let's go to the cause. Let's back it up. That's what the Gemara is doing. The butterfly effect, right?
because he wasn't allowed to party with the
Ripple,
rabbis.
yeah.
Okay, the ripples. One small action. Remember, this whole discussion comes about because the quote of King Solomon in Mishlei says, if you don't contemplate the results of your action, bad things could happen, right?
Mhm.
So this is proof. What happens?
Story of my life.
You don't sit and think, cause and effect. You don't work out scenarios. You don't take a moment. Ezehu chacham, as the sages tell us. Ezehu chacham, who is a wise man? Haro'et nolad, he who sees the future. Could anyone see the future? It means you sit and you think about the outcome. If the outcome has a chance of becoming bad, don't do it. Okay? Fine. So what happens? Bar Kamsa now comes to Jerusalem. He comes to bring the Caesar's gift, this fattened, beautiful, fine calf. Savu Rabbanan, the rabbis sit and have a discussion, and they consider, Savu Rabbanan, the Karavai, they consider bringing it up as a sacrifice. Why? Mishum Shlem Machus, in order to keep positive relationships with the government. Okay? It's important to remember, in Jewish law, number one concern, physical well-being. Okay? Besides for 3, any commandment in the Torah is to be violated when it comes to preserving life. Okay, so if you're worried not bringing the sacrifice will cause death, you must bring the sacrifice, right? You suspend any law to save life. Okay, except for, what are the 3?
Idolatry, forbidden sexual relations,
adultery,
and then
Adultery.
Eating.
What's the 3rd one?
Idolatry, and
3rd cardinal sin. Come on, we only have 3. We don't have 7. It can't be so hard.
Idolatry.
In public,
Murder.
like eating.
Jeff? Murder.
Murder, yeah.
Murder, idolatry, adultery, those technical difficulties. We're almost done. Typically we try and finish by 9 o'clock so we can sit and enjoy after the class. Okay? So the rabbis get this blemished calf from the Caesar and they discuss maybe they should bring it on the altar in the temple, okay? Amr lahu Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkulas. Rabbi Zechariah, one of the senior rabbis at that time, not mentioned very often in the Talmud. I'm not going to get into when he is mentioned because Rabbi Varney spoke about it on Tisha B'Av, and that video is on Facebook, so you could get into his interesting take on this. But Rabbi Zechariah
It's
says,
also attached to the email.
Also, the email that went
Yeah,
out today.
I started. I didn't have time, but I just.
Good. So now you'll know which Rabbi Zechariah we're talking about. He gets up and he says, "We have a problem. If we accept the sacrifice, Yomru Bali Mumin Craven the Gabe Mizbeach. People will learn from here that you are allowed to sacrifice a blemished animal on the altar. They'll quote this story as proof that you are allowed to bring a blemished animal on the altar. They'll forget the law, they'll misinterpret the law, and they'll think it's okay. Okay? So what's the solution? Savor Lemiktele. So the rabbi says, all right, new solution. Let's just kill Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa's coming to cause death and destruction. Jewish law tells us somebody who wants to kill you, you kill him first, right? He has the law of a rodef. A rodef is somebody who's chasing you to kill you. You're allowed to kill him. Self-defense. That law is applied when somebody goes to a tyrannical leader who kills people for no good reason and informs on you to that leader. He's considered a rodef. He's giving you to the government to be killed. The government has no laws, and he's saying, oh, he's cheating, whatever, and he knows you're going to get killed. He has the law of rodef. So in that time, the Roman government might kill Jewish people because of Bar Kamsa. He's considered a rodef. He's coming to kill us.
A rodef is this person that.
Rodef is a person who's chasing you to kill you. Okay?
Chase.
It literally means chasing you to kill you, but as I said, it could be applied to someone who's giving you to the powers who will kill you, assuming you don't deserve it, right? Assuming they kill people for whatever stupid reason. In a civilized society with a court and with a justice system, and you do have your day in court, you can't say somebody who tells the government on me is a rodef, I'm going to kill him. In those days, when the Romans would have definitely killed Jewish people over this, he had the law of a rodef. So the court, the Jewish court, had full right to kill him, to save the Jewish people, right? To prevent the destruction and the untold slaughter of millions. Good idea. Amrul Rabbi Zechariah. Rabbi Zechariah says, no, we have another problem if we kill him. What's the problem? Yaimru, people will say, they'll learn a lesson. Meita mum b'kedashim yeherag. People are going to say, the punishment for bringing a sacrifice of a blemished animal is death penalty. The Torah says you cannot bring a blemished animal. What's the penalty? A person gets whipped if he does it. If we kill him, people will say, what's the penalty? Death. People will learn the wrong law. We have another problem if we kill him.
Just make him disappear.
That's assuming that that everybody will know the full story.
Well, when you look through the Gemara, we've learned some Gemara, so you have some familiarity with it. How do we learn the laws? How are laws extrapolated? By stories. People tell stories. The rabbi did this, so we know this law. And the first class, I think I gave an example of how do we know it's okay, it's forbidden for a man to touch another woman. Okay? For his wife, it's allowed. For another woman, it's not allowed. It's not allowed to have any pleasure from contact with a woman unless you're allowed to marry her. The Gemara says, 1 second, what about my granddaughter? I can't touch her. Right? The Gemara says, no, granddaughter's okay. How do we know? There's this great rabbi who came to visit his son, put his granddaughter on his lap. If it's forbidden, he wouldn't have done it. So we learned a lot of it. So any law could be learned from the behavior of the rabbis in the times of the Mishnah. So if the rabbis in the times of the Mishnah would have said, kill somebody when the person brought the blemished animal, it would have been perfectly legitimate mistake to learn the law that someone who brings a blemished animal deserves a death penalty.
I have some big questions. One is, if they kill him and it's public knowledge, then also Nero would know that he was killed. And wouldn't he be upset or suspicious or wonder why he was killed?
Well, okay, but you're looking at through the lens of today, the distance between Rome and Jerusalem, and whether Nero would hear, whether word would have gotten back. There's a lot of ifs. Okay, now Bar Kamsa, it was legitimate fear that he would travel back to Rome and tell him the outcome. But if he wouldn't travel back, who's to say Nero cared that much, right? Mm-hmm. He sent and sacrificed to Jerusalem, to the Jewish temple.
And they could just...
Maybe he would hear about it, maybe he would not hear about it. Maybe he would assume they just sacrificed it. He sent it. Who's to say they didn't sacrifice it? Okay, so they weren't worried necessarily so much that Nero might hear that they killed him or he disappeared. They were more worried for preserving the integrity of the Torah, of the halacha, of the Jewish law. So therefore their primary concerns were either somebody learning a false law that you could bring a blemished animal in the temple, or someone would learn the false law that someone who brings a blemished animal in the temple deserves death penalty. So that was their primary concern.
So, but couldn't they, concerning the second one, that people might think that anybody who brings a blemished animal would be put to death,
right?
Could the rabbis not just explain to everyone why he was killed?
Maybe.
The real reason why?
Maybe, and there are many, many times that we have stories in the Talmud similar, like they have to explain this situation only applies in this time, and there's a legitimate worry that someone might see the action and not hear the reason. So where do we have it? We have it with divorce. A Kohen is forbidden to marry a divorcee. Okay? Sometimes someone has to give a divorce even though the woman wasn't really married to him. People heard that there was a wedding, even if there wasn't. So people might think there was a wedding. So we tell them, give a divorce. Right? You're not living together. You're not man and woman. People think she's a married woman. No one could marry her because people heard maybe they got married abroad. Give her a divorce just to be safe. Okay, he gives her a divorce. What happens if she wants to marry a Kohen now? She's a divorcee. She's not a real divorcee, but she got the divorce. The bill of divorce was given to her. So the rabbi says she shouldn't marry a Kohen because someone might think she's really a divorcee. So the rabbis say, wait a second. People will know that the only reason he gave her the divorce papers is because They heard that maybe she was married, but she really wasn't married. So the rabbi says, no. People might heard that she gave the divorce, but not hear why, and they legitimately think that she's a divorcee, and now they're going to think that it's okay for a divorced woman to marry a Kohen.
Can't you marry, if you divorce Kohen, can you marry a Kohen?
If who divorces a Kohen? If a woman divorces a
If a
Kohen,
woman divorces-
she cannot marry a Kohen. If it's a mitzvah to marry your own divorcee. If someone gets divorced, the Torah says you could marry her again, as long as she didn't get
But
married
not
to someone
someone
else.
else.
Meanwhile, what happens if a Kohen divorces his wife? He can't marry her again. In fact, there are many cases brought in Jewish law. A Kohen divorces his wife because they've been married for 10 years, and she didn't get pregnant. Jewish law is you have to have children. After 10 years, presumably you can't have children. The law is to get divorced, find a different wife. She can't remarry her. No, not even his own divorce.
Or the law against polygamy came in like 10, 11 centuries. They could have like 2 wives.
The law against polygamy is the cherem de Rabbeinu Gershon. Rabbeinu Gershon said about 700-800 years ago, a while ago, can't take 2 wives.
But
Yeah,
the
but-
Yemenites were practicing it up until like now. Like
I know that some people...
Today, no one practices anymore.
Do you know anything about... I know that quite a few years ago,
Right.
people in Haifa, some women say, I want my husband to marry another woman because I don't want to divorce him because we
But
don't
the
have
law
children."
of Israel doesn't allow it. The law of